open somehow to interpretation?
Oh, good questions. Thank you. So I'm very pleased to be here. It's great to be part of the festival, and the opportunity to talk online is really fantastic too. So thank you. Yeah, so the inspiration, the start of this whole project was very straightforward, actually. So we have a very lively and active spoken word scene here in Adelaide in South Australia. And one of the local publishers here is called Paroxysm Press. And for many years now, we've had events where a group of local poets have put together a show inspired by a famous record album. And so everybody gets given a song, and then you have to reinterpret it in some way as a poem and as a performance piece. So most people do just poetry, but I normally do mine with some music as well. And so this time round, it was a David Bowie tribute, and I got given Diamond Dogs was the song I got given. So it's completely arbitrary like that. And so then I had a look at the lyrics, had a look at what was fit behind it, and then I just came up with this idea and sort of work backwards. You say there's a phrase in English about dog years, things live in dog years. So a dog year is supposed to be 7 human years, because that's how long dogs live. So a dog lives to 15 years, that's 7 times that, then that's how old he is in human years. So I had this idea of dog years being some compression of time. And then you have this sort of, and there's another phrase in English, the dog days, dog day afternoon, which is sort of days hanging around, things going bad, not quite right, it means different things to different people. So that's where the title came from. And so then I imagine, I'm not quite sure how I got from that to the final version of the words. I did it fairly quickly, and I imagined a city full of corruption, basically decay and corruption, which isn't that far from the truth in lots of places. Big business people behaving badly, media people behaving badly, politicians behaving badly, where there's an aspect of secrecy, of collusion, of conspiracy. But then a lot of those people live pretty unhealthy lifestyles too. So through bad luck or bad life management, they're often sick, and they often get killed or die early of heart attacks or something. Anyway, so all these bits sort of joined in. That's where the words came from. And then to make the music, I found the music for Diamond Dogs and the chords for it, and I learned how to play it a bit, but then you can't use the same tune. So I took the chords and turned them upside down and reharmonised them and did all sorts of things like that. And then I just started playing, try and learn how to play it. And then again, the music developed a life of its own, and it turned into the final thing. So that's how all that came together. And the second question was something else about how I've forgotten what the second question was after the inspiration.
Yeah, the second question was because we hear in your text the voice speaking in front.
Oh, whose voice is it?
Oh yeah, if you had the idea of who was.
I think it's the voice of an anonymous person caught in the system who is trying to get back at these bad bosses, get back at the corrupt politicians, get back at the bad businessmen, the bankers who are too influential, and maybe that anonymous person might be the guard dog at the bank, or it might be the cleaner, or it might be I don't know, it could be something like that. So it's some sort of anonymous person who may or may not really be a dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what I like is that you leave it open anyway to interpretation. It's not so clear. And actually, I have to say that the first time I saw your film, I was wondering. I asked myself, okay, but who is talking? And at the beginning, my first impression was that it was the city itself talking somehow, because
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, everyone have his own interpretation that then can change also with by watching the video. But I think I thought that because the way we see the city is the way the city is presented is like something almost alive, like it's always moving. The buildings are always changing, so it seems like really an alive creature that we are that we are. And
Thank you. You've got it. Again, I don't know. I didn't start with that as an idea, but it happened as I was doing the animations. I thought, oh, I could try this and do that. And once I made a couple of scenes, then the whole thing. That's the way to do the whole thing. Because I made many more scenes than that, which ended up not using as usual.
Yeah, this leads to another question. Actually, I will skip one question, then I will come back later, because this third question I had in mind is more related to what we are talking. Is that I've seen that I checked some other of your works, and I've seen that you used also other times this technique of taking images or videos from the reality and then compositing them in other images that are somehow taking something from the reality, but they are not real. And this is the technique you use in this video. And yeah, I liked it very much because it's somehow mixing sort of documentary way of looking at the reality, but then it's completely deturning it. And I've seen the same kind of technique in Flood Tide and in other of your works like After Image and Heist. And yeah, I wanted to tell you, what is your interest in this technique? Like, what brought you to try out this technique, and what do you find interesting in this?
Well, so what's interesting, it's incredibly challenging. It's hard, and it takes a long time to, to do. But the real answer, it comes back to your question about who is the voice, who is the voice in Dog Days, and the ambiguity in all of that. So, unlike most, I came into doing video poetry from two directions. So I've been a published poet for quite a long time now, and I've got books and things. But in my previous life, I was a scientist, and we did a lot of fancy microscope work, and we were using digital imaging right at the start. So we were sort of, our lab and our collaborators were developing programs that, like Photoshop before there was Photoshop and things like that. So I've always had an interest and a knowledge on how to manipulate digital images. So then one of the things that really got me interested in doing video poetry was that nearly all of my poems are fictions, and that is one thing. And the second thing is that I imagine a voice in some sort of place, usually when I write my words. And if you ask about any of my poems, if I read them out loud, I tend to use different voices and different styles of reading. I could probably draw you a little landscape of where that poem is situated in some sort of way. And they're like dreamscapes. They're fragmentary. And I don't have much theory behind any of this, but there's one little bit of theory which comes, again, out of my science background. So I was a neuroscientist for 35 years. And one of the really amazing things that we used to teach, and I used to do demonstrations of, is just how little of what we perceive in the world is actually coherent. It's very, very fragmentary, and this feeling of continuous experience like we're having right now is really an assemblage of lots and lots of little fragments, and that can be broken up very easily. And like dreams are a very extreme version of that. But even just in day-to-day life, it's very easy to get distracted. It's hard to keep your mind on something. Little thoughts are flashing into your mind all the time. If I mentioned to you something about apples and jam, you probably would have had a little vision of apples and jam just then, flick through your mind. I controlled your brain. So what I've realised is when I first started playing with video is that it allows you to create these artificial worlds or these imagined worlds in a way that I can hint at with words that you can't fully experience. And so Dog Daze is the first piece where I really I tried to make a coherent feeling of, like you said, I love your comment that it feels like it's the city talking. I had never thought of it like that, but that's fantastic, because that's the visual impression I wanted to give. Mm-hmm. And so each little scene is made up of sometimes as many as 20 elements sometimes, and some of them are video, some of them are animations, some of them are still images that I've animated and cropped and masked and then made them move in different ways and layered in different ways. So a big part of making it all come together was when I was about halfway through, I sort of realised what was happening, which is pretty much what you said, and then I wanted to make it a coherent look about all the scenes. So then I basically, the sky in all of them is this funny sort of brown, it goes from yellowish brown to grey, like smoggy, really badly ugly smog city sky. And so I actually made that background and put that right through the whole thing. And then everything is overlaid on that background, so that helps give the colour and the consistency of colour. Then I colour matched across all the different scenes so they fit that.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting, and yeah, you can see that there is a lot of work behind. And yeah, as I said, the beauty is also that it's like it's taking elements from our reality, but then it's completely deturning it. And I like this aspect of the city always changing and always moving, and it's like an image comes to you and then another and then a thought and then the thing you thought already changed. It's very it's what made me think to the city, think of the city as a live creature.
Thank you.
And okay, another question that I had, maybe somehow you already answered probably a little bit, but I was wondering if you if you have sort of habit in how you live your creative process, like if your creative process behind your videos always are somehow working with the same steps, or if for any video somehow you change, or the creative process totally changes. How is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And most of the time I do work in the same order usually. So I usually start with the words and then I do the music, but they can be quite separate. So I'm making music tracks all the time. I'm writing words all the time.
Yeah.
And then I've sung, these words will go with that music, and we'll see if that works, and I'll rewrite the words a bit, rewrite the music to make them fit. Sometimes I have the words, I think, I need to make the music for that, and I'll write something and see if it works. And sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. And then I do the video, is the way I usually do it. And the reason I do that way round is that the words are driving what images I want to use because as I said before, I nearly always have a very strong visual feel for what I've been writing. So I know what it could look like. Usually ends up something different, but I know where to start anyway. And then the other thing is the music then drives the editing of the scenes, and the timing of the video. So I'm really fussy about that. So I try and get the edits on the video to be very, very tightly locked to the audio, so that they're on the beats, or they're on regular number of bars or something like that. And then of course the vocal, I also usually just record that freeform and then edit it to tie that into the music. And then depending how the video is going, then I might go back and re-edit the music or exactly where the voice comes in. And that also depends a little bit on how much text I end up using in the video too. Sometimes there's almost no text actually written on the video. Sometimes I have just about all of the text there. So that also depends how the scenes are cut, how that fits in with the music. Shifts in the style of the music, how do they fit with the words, and then how do they fit with a set of scenes, like a section of the video. So I usually do it that way, but sometimes I do it the complete opposite way, rarely. So Flood Tide, one that you mentioned, which was a huge amount of work. That took me like 9 months or 10 months of work, and there are over 1,000 scene edits in an 8-minute video in that. And that one, I had the idea came, that's about imagining the city here I live, Adelaide, after climate changes has induced sea level rise after a storm. And Adelaide on the plain is in 2 sections. One section is very low near the beach, and the other section where I live is up in the hills. And I imagine what it would be like if down there got flooded. It wouldn't need very much to do that. And so I had this idea, and I'd written a talk for a conference about it, but that was it. And then I got this. I thought, how can I imagine Adelaide being flooded? And so I spent hours about it. Took months of footage, and I went out specifically to get things. I went look around for scenes, look around for places, went and got special shots, put it all together. And I had some soundtrack music that I had written for something else, which ended up not being used. I did all of that, and then I put the words over the top of it. So that's unusual. I like doing it that way, but I don't usually do it that way.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because especially when you have to put together all these elements, everybody starts from different points, and okay. I also read on your bio that you are quite an eclectic artist. I mean, we already know from this because you are you write poems, you write music, you directed videos, you write books, and you also have a scientific background. So what I wanted to ask you is how did you come to from a scientific background to make video poems and write poems, and also if you feel that there is any connection between these two parts of your life?
Yeah, good question. First of all, there's a very close connection between those two things. So even going back when I was at school, which is a long time ago now, I was interested in languages and I was interested in science. So at school, I did 3 languages other than English, and I was good at English too. And then I did science, and I always wanted to be a scientist, but I always enjoyed writing and art as well. My mum played piano at a local church, so there's a bit of music in the family, but I never learnt music at school or anything like that. And then when I went to university, I was doing science, but I'd started doing poetry, and I was part of a poetry workshop at university while I was doing science, and I learnt performance poetry, and I edited magazines and things, co-edited magazines then. And when I finished my undergraduate degree, I had to get a scholarship in order to go on and do my PhD research degree. But because if I didn't get a scholarship, I couldn't have afforded it. And I'd already decided then if I didn't get a scholarship to do my PhD in science, I'd go back and follow up from my poetry and do languages, or do linguistics or something like that. So it's always been there. And then, so I wrote a lot as a student, and then I got completely put off as I read more and more really, really good writers. I thought, yeah, I can't do that. And I had this sort of feeling that it's all been done. And I've always liked experimental writing, you know, ranging from Dada and surrealists through to people like Samuel Beckett and so on. So, so then I started doing science. My science was going really, really well, and I was very successful at that. And I stopped writing poetry altogether, but I never stopped reading. I read novels a lot. I actually get more inspiration from novels than from poetry for my own writing. Maybe because of this imagined world that we were talking about right at the start. And so even during science, I always liked writing. I always liked writing the papers, and I always ended up being the person who was editing the paper, the research papers. I was an editor on a scientific journal for a long time, 10 years or something. I always liked that process. And then, but the other side of that was that we were doing a lot of public science. So where I was in a medical school, and we were part of a hospital, and it was really enjoyable going out, talking to patients or talking to donors, or doing public performances we're doing science performances. You know, this is how your brain works. This is how your hands work. This is how, and then I started work with artists, with musicians and choreographers and people like that. And so this is how we do music. This is how we dance, and so on. And so I started to make connections with artists. And then we had this a really big open forum, went for a whole day on the body and the brain and how that works. And for that, I wrote some music and I wrote some poems for the first time for 25 years or something, and people liked it, and that was all right. And then along with that, I met some artists, and we got on, one in particular, Catherine Truman, we got on really well with, and then she worked in my laboratory as an artist in residence, and she contributed to teaching and research programs, and then I learned more about how to do art as a practice. I had never really thought about that before. And so at the same time I was writing more, I was learning more about electronic music when I was sick of doing science. And then with Catherine, we had a big art installation in 2008 or 9 or something like that. And then we gradually worked towards another one. When I retired in 2014, that year, Catherine and I and a couple of other artists had a really, really massive installation exhibition, which ran for a couple of months in the city, which was fantastic. So, but even so, that was 6 years ago, even then, I didn't really think, I was doing a little bit of video. I've been making videos for teaching and a little bit for research. We had an incredible microscope that let us see things that no one else in the world could see. And one of the ways we produced the data from that was to make little videos. So I actually learned how to do pretty fancy image processing in videos from our $1 million microscope. But so the link between all of that is that in science, you've still got to be able to write well. It might be dry and full of technical speak, but it still has to be well written so people can understand it. You give a talk, you've got 10 minutes to talk about your last 3 years worth of research. You get 10 minutes at a conference. It's got to be right on the ball. So you have to be able to speak well to do that. And then you have to be able to illustrate your work with the best quality images that you can. And the people I was working with and I, we were very proud. We'd get cover images on the covers of they use their pictures on the covers of the magazines, the scientific journals, because they liked the way that we put our pictures together. So you put all that together, the public science we were doing, and my working with artists, there's no difference. In here, it feels the same. Doing something creatively is some sort of arts practice, compared to doing science. And one of the underlying, there are two things really in common between the two types of practice. One is that most of the time it doesn't work. And when it does, you just got to go and tell everybody. And those two things are really important similarities, built around curiosity, built around the desire to explore, built around the ability to withstand uncertainty, because you never know what's going to happen, whether you're doing an experiment or whether you're trying to make a new video or develop some new bit of music or something like that, do a performance. I feel the same doing a performance as I do going into a lecture. Yeah, I think it's going to work, but maybe it won't. So that all feels the same. One of the things I love now about doing arts rather than science is that you can escape the strictures of evidence. And so in science, everything's got to be, you've got to have hardcore evidence. You've got to have endless replications of your data. It gets really boring, it gets really tedious. And everything has to be cited, and which is very, very important, or the references in the literature. I used to love doing that. I mean, that was all part of what I loved doing for 30 years. But Jesus, it's good not to have to do it anymore. So if I write a poem, that's it, boom. But even so, I still have poems with references. In one of my books, it's got poems. It's got 6 pages of citations at the end. I couldn't resist.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting, and I never saw those connections because I mean, me personally, I've never been into science, but it's true that it's very, like, the explorative aspect is can be really similar somehow. Also the fact that in the end, when you are editing something or you are composing something, it's like you're in your lab with your material and you spend a lot of time, and it's very inner process somehow that you live.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
You need to make a lot of trials, you fail a lot, and then, so yeah, now I can really see the connection somehow. Thank you. And okay, I just ask you the last question. If you are working on something new, if you have projects you are working on now, the videos or also other kind of projects?
Yes, there's always something on the go. The quiet life. So we're talking about how I get started on videos. Well, I'm actually doing one at the moment where it's another one about environmental crisis and things. And it's all going to be composited from images of insects and spiders and flowers and plants and things, some around our garden, but also up in the national park where I was up there today filming insects. and that's going to be I've got an idea for this. This is one that's being driven by how it's going to look. I haven't got words yet, and I think I know how the music's going to work. So that's a slow project, and that'll just take as long as it takes to do. And that'll be all done with compositing and artificial scenery and things like that. So there's that. There's a couple of other little video projects I'm working on. I do a lot of work around Adelaide supporting the local poetry scene, manage websites and events and things like that. And next week's the big state final for one of the competitions I help with some other people to run. And then I have a link to Sweden as well. So Fredrik Iriarty, who's tuning in at the moment, I see. I met him in Sweden when I was in Sweden last year. In your spring last year, in May last year. And he's a fantastic musician and artist himself. And so we're doing a collaboration of music and words and things, which we're, I think, nearly finished. I was working on that today, and we've got some more mixes to send to each other overnight and see how it sounds tomorrow. So there's that. And yeah, there's a few other video projects lying around the place. So mostly these days I'm concentrating video. So most of the writing I do, the music I do, I'm thinking the next step is a video of some things of some sort.
Yeah. Wow, that's very interesting, because I mean, I hope we will be able to meet in person in Sweden then, once this whole thing will finish.
It'd be absolutely fantastic, because as I said previously, I think I've been to Sweden lots of times. I have good friends, scientific friends in Sweden who live just outside Göteborg, but I also had colleagues in in Stockholm and in Malmo and Lund at different times in the past. But I've been to Sweden lots of times, and in a normal year, I would have been here now.
Yeah,
because it would have been fantastic. We went through your area last year on our way down to Åland, and so I know where you are.
great, yeah.
Which is really wonderful.
So we are also in the middle of the nature somehow. It's a small town,
Yes.
and that's somehow the beauty of the festival. Usually when it's in summer, because you go to the lake together, you go you share the art, but you also share living in this place with the other artists. So yeah, let's hope for next year.
Let's hope. Yeah.
And yeah, Ian, thank you very much for being here. It was very nice to talk with you, and I hope that that people will like your video, will watch it tonight or during the week. And yeah, if you want to add anything.
I just say thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, I know how hard it is, how much work it is to put a festival together, and it's immense. So I really appreciate that. It's fantastic to be part of it, and to talk today has been really wonderful. And I have to say I spent a fair bit of time today looking through the Saturday program, and so much variety and so much good work, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest of it. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope everybody survives the virus and we'll meet in person sometime. Not too far away.
I just want to leave this last moment. I don't know I don't know how many people are following right in this moment. If there is any questions, I'm asking to Colin, who is behind the computer. Is there any question from people on Zoom that maybe will? No, okay. So we don't have any questions, any other questions, but if we will have any comment about your video, we will let you know.
Okay, yeah, I'm very happy to answer online or provide more information of anybody, technical stuff or anything like that. If people are interested, contact me through you or through my website or something, or Facebook. Or whatever. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ian, again.
Oh, thank you.
Have a nice evening.
And thank you.